had the thing happen where you look back on an assessment that you made of somebody or something, and you had a pretty negative feeling about it, but then time passes and you find yourself sort of softening on that person or that thing? That happens to me sometimes. I can think of politicians, leaders, influential people in culture who were doing a thing, and at the time, I didn't really see it. I didn't really like it. But given the way time played out, maybe they're a little bit vindicated. Maybe I discovered they saw something I didn't see. I mean, settle down. We're still talking, at least in part, about politicians here. But every now and then, I reevaluate that and I realize, oh, maybe I was a little too hasty. Or heck, maybe my judgment was spot on in the moment, but the way sensibilities and the flow of time played out, it really reframes that character or that person and their decisions in a better light. That handful of things in our hip pocket and our mental filing cabinet, just to remind us that sometimes we're wrong about stuff, or sometimes even if we're maybe sort of right about stuff in the moment, that still stories aren't ever fully written. It takes a little while, and it's okay to reevaluate and think about things in a little different light. I guess what I'm driving at is this. I want to take your temperature a little bit here and ask how you're feeling about Xerxes. His time on screen is pretty much done here as we get to the second edict for the Jews to go and defend themselves and fight back. Once we get into verse 20 of Esther, I mean, it's kind of just summary, and drama-wise, there's none left. From here on out, it's more like the tone of 1st or 2nd Chronicles, very matter-of-fact, very business, and then the king did this, and then so-and-so did this, very detail-oriented, and we'll cover all of it. But as we make that tonal pivot here in Esther, and as I realize, oh, that's the end of getting the up-close, very human, technicolor view of Xerxes, as opposed to the stone inscription view of Xerxes, I find myself kind of missing him. He looks awful in the early going of the book of Esther, but looks, I think, more pitiable as we go along. In the early going, of course, it's, he has 127 provinces, super powerful. He had a party, everybody got drunk, and then he's awful to his wife. And then after he's awful to his wife, who doesn't agree to go along with something that she shouldn't have agreed to go along with, then, assuming we get this all lined up right historically, he goes off and gets his butt handed to him in Greece and leaves behind his trusted general Mardonius to go ahead and just win and save a little face. But Mardonius loses at Plataea and he gets killed. And then it looks like Xerxes spirals a whole bunch between chapter 1 and chapter 2. And when we rejoin him in chapter 2, he's a broken man. But I think I can say with confidence that there is a pivot here from this despot, this emperor, this oppressor, to really this bumbling fool who still has all the trappings of the great king of kings, the king of earth and air and water, and the king who demands your tribute, and the king who commands the great cosmopolitan empire. He's not that anymore. Now he's a guy who can't figure out how to get a girl. And he's a guy who's paralyzed and can't make any decisions for himself. And he's a guy who comes off to me, honestly, like he just wants to be liked. It's almost like he started out with a relatability factor of Commodus from Gladiator, who's just nightmarishly evil through and through, even if he does have a few recognizable human traits. It's like Xerxes starts out as that, and then he pivots into Michael Scott. Still a really bad decision maker. I'm talking about the manager of NBC's The Office from back when things were still funny. And if you ever watch that show, you know that the defining characteristic of Michael Scott is insecurity. He's paralyzed by his insecurity, but also at other times his insecurity is the thing that makes him go and do big, loud, insane, bombastic things. He just wants people to like him. His big wish is that he'll have 100 kids, so he'll have 100 friends, and they'll all have to like him. He's just a little boy, and his behavior is familiar because I got a little bit of that in me. I mean, I like it when people like me more than I like it when people don't like me. What you run into is if you get a person with this kind of power who is that insecure and who that much wants to be respected and liked, then that's very, very dangerous. And Xerxes is more a loaded gun, a dangerous, sharp instrument that is too easily picked up and wielded by people of low character. And the sadness that Xerxes seems to feel when his eunuchs, who eventually kill him, or, I mean, it doesn't happen in the Bible, but eventually, I mean, he gets killed in a eunuch plot that we'll talk about later. I mean, even the eunuchs are like, oh man, he's really down and something needs to happen. And so they propose the idea of doing this search for some beautiful virgins for the king, and maybe we could get you a new wife and we could just try that again, pal. Hey, you doing all right? Would that cheer you up a little bit, do you think? You know what? You don't even have to answer that. I'm just going to do it, and if you don't like it, we can send all the girls back, but I'm just going to do it. Would that be okay? Okay, I'm not hearing anything from you, buddy. We're just going to do it. It has the feel of him being a very delicate, very fragile guy. Still, I mean, it's bad, and he did a bad thing, real ugly thing, made a huge mess coming out of the edict in chapter 3 at the behest of Haman. But then we get into 5, and he receives his queen, and he seems really delighted by her. Like, this is what I wanted all along. I just wanted people to like me. Does she really like him? I don't know. She's kind of using him, right? But she kind of has to, because look what he did when somebody else used him. I mean, if you squint hard enough, you can almost feel sorry for him for a second, as he thinks his queen is just crazy about him and just dressed up pretty because she just so badly wants him to be happy and he's her favorite person. But it's not really it. She's trying to get close to the throne of power as well. And for good reason. I'm rooting for her here. I don't think she's wrong. But then we do see the king start to change a little bit in chapter 6 with this sleepless night, and he realizes, maybe I'm not taking care of the people who take care of me enough. That's a huge epiphany for somebody who's raised like Xerxes was raised, and I've given him a hard time, and deservedly so, but growth is growth. Let's give credit where it's due, and he's responsive to this impulse, and it sets in motion good things that begin the undoing of the mess that he had made. And then I feel more sympathy for him when the stuff comes out about Haman and he can't even think of a plan. He's painted himself into such a horrible social corner that I believe he has to go out onto the balcony to stew after Esther reveals her accusation against Haman. And I really, the more I think about it, I do imagine that Esther somehow, I don't even think like sexually or anything. I mean, that wouldn't make sense contextually, but I think somehow she was enticing Haman to come closer, beg a little more. I mean, I'm having trouble. What are you doing? I imagine her teasing Haman into that situation because she seems to have the savvy and the cleverness to understand her husband's situation so that when he comes back in, he can have a save face way to take action against Haman. But even then, he doesn't know what to do, and everybody in the room has to spell it out for him and be like, hey, champ, this guy, he's a problem. And he's a problem on a lot of levels, and you have what you need to be able to deal with him. So, I mean, we're going to put this bag on his head. Is that okay? Yeah, put a bag on his head. And he built gallows to impale the guy who saved your life, who you just honored publicly. So we really, really wouldn't want that. That makes you look pretty bad, but you look better if you impale the guy who did that on his own gallows, because then it's of his own making and you didn't do it. So there are gallows. Would you want us to? Yeah, put him up there. Let's do that. That is my idea. That is what I want to do. And even in this very comical sequence, I feel a little bit of that, again, Michael Scott level pity for the guy. And then in chapter 8, the dude still doesn't understand it. And he's like, there, I got you Haman's money. Would that be enough? Would that get it right? That seems to be what he's intoning. And Esther and Mordecai are like, nah. Esther cries a whole bunch more. And they're like, but we have to save the Jews, honey. Are you hearing? That's the thing I really, really want. Here, look, I just gave all the money to Mordecai. I don't even want the money. This has always been about saving all the Jews. So can we do that? And he's like, yeah, for sure. Definitely. We want to do that. Here's the ring. And that makes me feel a little more sympathy for him as well. Not that he's right, but that he's just a wash. He has no idea what kind of actual power he's up against here. And then finally, there's that sad, strange moment we looked at a couple days ago when Xerxes is sizing up the mess that he has allowed to happen right under his nose, the carnage, the flumes of smoke rising from the houses of noblemen in his court who he knows. The sons of his right-hand man are all dead, and he's musing to himself, if this happened here, what does it look like out in the provinces? But still, he is awash. He doesn't know exactly what's going to make his wife happy in the situation. He doesn't even know what resolution would look like. He's so far removed from reality as he's portrayed in this book. And he looks at his wife in Esther 9, whatever that was, verse 12. Now, what's your petition? It'll be given you. What's your request? It'll also be granted. And Esther's like, yeah, we need one more day of this. And the king just does it. And after that, we don't get any more vignettes. We don't get a close-up human look at Xerxes. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. Maybe I'm inflicting all of these things onto the text. That's not one of those maybe, but definitely I'm totally not. No, maybe I am. It's a story. We're all going to read it the way we read it. We're going to have these little emotional resonant strings that get plucked as you go along. But I know the guy made a huge mess, and also I kind of feel for him. And also, he is the quintessential clown king in a whole series of clown kings who we read about throughout the Bible. And ultimately, what chance did he ever have? I mean, he's going toe-to-toe with the God who made all things and controls the unfolding of history and guides and directs the hearts of kings like a watercourse. Still, looking back on all of it, I feel softer towards Xerxes, maybe not respect, but certainly a degree of pity and a little bit of empathy. And I would love to hear where you are at with that as well. All right, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.